The Quench, where you ask, we answer.
And we're back. Now, before we went on a break, we talked about creatives and we defined who a creative is. And we got from our audience what kind of challenges they have faced in their creative journey. And then we got advice from Mr. Makumu, and he told us, how do you circumvent those challenges? Now, let's talk about something that has been out there. Creativity and activism. Those two go hand in hand. When you sit down to write your poem, you're writing about love, yes. You've seen that girl, you've seen that gentleman, you're writing about love. You're also sometimes writing about spirituality, yes. You're talking about your journey in the spiritual world. Sometimes when you sit down, you're also talking about the government. What has the government done, governance and things like that. You're also calling out people for sexual harassment. Those are things we talk about, but then they're met with a lot of backlash. True? Is it just me? They're met with a lot of backlash. You sit down and you write a poem that is so based on sexuality, but society does not want you to speak about those things. It is haram to talk about those things. So let's talk about them. How do you circumvent the field as an activist? And I want to get those views from the audience. How do you circumvent the field as an activist? Okay, talk to me. Let me see those hands going up. How do you become a creative and an activist at the same time?
I'm Joseph Muli. And let me try to air out my view, though I might be, okay, let me say that, okay, there are a lot of, first of all, let me address the issue of, the issue of challenges on that part, that you find, as you try to compose, okay, I'm a musician, so let me address the music part of it. So basically you find that as you try to minister to these people in this given church, then you try to ensure that some of the songs, or the songs that you are maybe, that you have listed to maybe to sing or to minister to them, that at least they are addressing some of the issues that maybe they are going through. And in this case, it's issues to do with maybe spirituality. Most of them. You find that most of the people attending churches nowadays, they have made it maybe a custom, because maybe niliamka nikapata my parents are going to church, and maybe I was not maybe into the detailed part of what is salvation and what is redemption. Then now, because mimi ni mtoto wa pasi, or maybe my parents are going to church, then kuna that notion that I'm also saved, because the Lord that I associate with, they are also saved. So you find that it will take time for this person to be convinced, or maybe to bring these people into the real light. So now that's where we come in. You have to ensure that you are much relevant to that given aspect in as far as the spirituality is concerned.
Okay, nice. Relevance is very important. Are you saying these things to the right audience? Okay. Okay. Yeah. When you answer this thing, think about that time when if you're a poet, you wrote a love poem because you are in love, which is not a sin. It is beautiful to be in love. Butterflies, love is for the birds, and things like that. It is beautiful to be in love. And you wrote that poem, and then you went and said it in church. Did you do that? Okay, so if that happened to you, you can also tell us your experience, because you're trying to pass on one message in another place.
Okay, hi. My name is Tony. And from what I think, as a creative person, there are some things that you need to consider. And one, you have to be known well of what is happening in the society or what is happening around. Number two, you have to be creative in a way to put the issues that you are seeing in the society into actions or into creative ways, and time the right time to tell these things to people. Because as a person, as a dance, there are specific dance that you can dance to a specific audience, like they feel you have done what you expected them to do today. But you go to another place where you feel like, kwani sijakili the show leo, kwani nini may happen. So I feel like we need to be well known of what is happening, and to time the right time to give these ideas to the people so that they can hit like the goal or the target that we want to achieve as creative people.
Okay, relevance and then timing. Let's get another one.
Hi, my name is William. One of the ways that I think creatives can circumvent
the activism phase
is, I think he just nailed it like the way it's supposed to be said. Like a lot of artists, they they ignore like the part where they're supposed to be knowledgeable about what they're talking about.
Yeah.
You cannot talk about politics if you don't know about politics.
Yes.
Because you're going to say some things that are unnecessary or are not true, then you'll start some fracas. Yeah. So number one is educate yourself on the things that you want to talk about. Secondly, also about how you package your art or how you say what you want to say. Personally, I love to give perspectives or tell stories, because when you're telling a story or when you're giving a perspective, you're not necessarily saying this is right, this is wrong. Because there are artists or poets who love, like they are preachy. Basically say this is wrong. So you're kind of dividing, but when you give us perspective, you leave the people to judge for themselves what they think about it. And I think also the third one is artists also need to know that there are organizations. Unfortunately, I cannot name one off the top of my head, but there are organizations that help artists.
Yeah, Sylvester actually mentioned something on that note.
Yeah,
yes, go
who
ahead.
help artists, for example, when you make something and then it, for example, when King Kaka did the Wajinga Nyinyi thing, and basically started, he caught himself in a tight position, basically, may say. There are many instances like that, and there are organizations that help you. If you need exile, if you need protection, and if you need legal advice, if you need a lawyer to represent you. So I think also artists need to be knowledgeable about that.
Yeah. I think let's really take note of what William said and what the others have said. It's about the timing, the relevance, the information you have. It is important to have information. You can't keep saying the government is not doing things and maybe the government has been doing in the last 3 months. And then also it's important to know about those organizations. Even though you're a Christian and you feel like you're being attacked because you preach and because you used your form of art to actually minister, get help. It is important to know about those organizations. Let us know your view.
Okay, personally, I'm Esther. Yeah, I think you should also be radical and confident about your art. Like, if you are a creative, you obviously kutakuwa na a unique thing like kwako, like usijaribu kukopi mtu, just kuwa radical. Like obviously personally I was growing as a poet, like nilikuwa napata discouraged, like I was bad. Yeah, like guy nilikuwa mbaya. So like I was getting discouragements from like wacha tu isi yako. So like, but be radical, like believe in yourself, be confident na ukue radical, na pia understand audience yako. Like usikuwa unaenda kusema piece yenye inakaa very unrelatable kwa audience yenye unaenda kusema. Understand your piece, and I think even as a Christian creative, you should pray for wisdom and grace from God.
Yeah. When you said understand your piece, understand your content, I also want to say understand your audience. Understand your audience. Please don't take love stories to the wrong people. You will be beaten with stones and we will not be there to help you. Let me take this to Calvin, okay? Creativity and activism. A field that has always had issues, okay? We've had musicians, like you mentioned, singing about governance and singing about issues in the society that have not been addressed. And then rubbing the wrong shoulders, So how do you create that niche for yourself to be able to exist as an activist and as a creative?
Yeah. So, I mean, number one, we should be able to know that creativity in different aspects is actually one of the best voices. Okay? Like, number one, you should know as a creative that you have a voice. That is number one. You know that I have a voice, I'm creating change, and I'm actually on a particular path. And the reason why I'm saying like that is because most of the greatest people that we know today were actually creative. So if you look at, if you look at people like, let's say, Lucky Dube, for example, for those who listen to music, the kind of music that Lucky Dube did during those particular time had a really big influence in terms of those days when South Africa was struggling with apartheid.
Yeah.
And the kind of song that he did actually was able to bring these people together and say, can we actually reason together? Why do we hate each other? Why do we do this to each other? Okay? So meaning that as a creative, you have a voice. You have a voice that you can actually be able to bring people together. And by bringing these people together through your voice, they can actually be able to reason together and say, okay, this poetry, she's done a very good poem. What is this poem saying to our society? how can we actually be able to come together and actually probably forget our difference and be able to now be on the same course? So number one, you need to know that you have a voice. Number two is that you need to know that you need to be consistent in that voice. And I like to talk about consistency. You have to be consistent in that voice. For example, I mean, a good example is that Lucky Dube never sang once. Okay? And forget about even Lucky Dube. People like, I mean, for those who probably follow international activists like maybe
even Bob Marley himself.
You know, like somebody like you know, I know there's one I think I just forgot, but like we have so many activists who they were actually not singing, but they used the different voices. They wrote books, okay? And these books, I mean, the messages in those books were very, very strong, okay? So are you consistent in what you're doing? And what are you trying to be able to portray there? So we've talked about, for example, climate change. Right now we're talking about climate change. Can you be able to draw something that shows that if we all participated in this climate change, we can actually be able to help our world better? And once you draw something and it's outside there, most people will be like, wow, so this is actually the reason why we're suffering. You know, this is maybe the reason why our animals are dying. So can we all come together and what can we be able to do? Okay? And definitely as a creative, you always, despite you know, and I think she mentioned that, is that despite you always talk about the challenges that we have, you actually should also try to bring a solution. Okay? So you work as a creative is not only to show that, okay, we're doing so badly, but you can actually be able to propose, these are some of the solutions that actually we're offering. Okay? And so once you're actually able to do that, then you can actually be able to fill the space. And then the last one is, as a Christian, okay? As a Christian, you should be able to know, so the number one, you should be able to know that you have a voice as a Christian. So being a Christian doesn't mean that you don't have a voice. Yes, there's so many people maybe disregard what you're saying and all that, but even in that space, you should be able to know that you're a voice in that particular space, and through consistency, you can be able to achieve that goal. Because even if you look at the Bible, there's so many people that had different challenges, but they were very consistent in what they were doing. For example, Paul was very consistent in preaching the gospel to all those different churches, to the church of Corinth, the Romans, all all these different churches that he preached to, right? And he was going to all these different churches and telling them different things, right? And so what about if you only went to one church and then after that he gave up? Okay? So as a creative, you have to be consistent in what you're doing. You always have to look at different messages. If you're doing, for example, anything on governance, don't always just be on one thing. Look at the diversity of governance. Governance, we have social governance, we have political, we have economical. Can you be able to touch on those different aspects? Okay? And let me tell you, your voice will always be heard. And then I think the last one is be part of a network. Don't be a loner. Be part of a network. So if you're in poetry, are you part of a network in that poetry? Okay? If you are singing, are you part of the network? Because just as he said, sometimes you can get into a challenge. Your friends in that particular network are the ones who are going to come for you and say, they're going to come and say, okay, that point didn't mean that. So you have a supporting system in that particular network. So make sure you also have a supporting system. And I just want to remind you that if you're a creative, you have a very strong voice. Yeah. And we've seen in Kenya, people like Giuliani, okay? People like Giuliani, the reason why we know Giuliani today is because of the kind of music that he sings, right? Niko njaa na siwezi karanga, sindio? I'm hungry, but I can't be able to afford even any food, right? So that's the kind of message that we've been able to listen to that song. And he goes ahead and tells you how the government is doing and what, you know, why the small guy who actually steals chicken because he was hungry is actually going to serve life sentence than the guy who steals the millions in the government. Okay? And this is some of the things that can start a conversations like, oh, how do you fight corruption? How do you do all these things? So always look at your creative and that different sphere. Thank you.
Okay, that was very detailed. He has given a number of examples of things that you can actually do to exist as an activist, to create that niche as a creative in your own way. Now, let us look at it as a Christian creative, okay? So you have always been singing songs about God and things like that. But then there are these other songs that cannot be necessarily described as secular. They're not praising God. These poems are not praising God, but they're speaking about something in the society. How do you actually bring out activism in the church as a creative?
Okay. I'll start by saying that it's also good as young people to know that there is, as much as we are being called to be activists out there, there's also a place for respect and morality.
Yeah.
Because I think that is where the trouble begins. The moment maybe the church leadership feels like this one is a bit disrespectful or there is a bit of immorality in it. Because in a different show, we talked about how everything is getting sexualized.
Yeah.
Truth of the matter is you can be an activist, but one who is respectful and one who stands with morals. Because morals are what will really define you and make you to become outstanding. So how can you do that? I think it is by first of all understanding what the problem is. Because the whole reason for creativity is after you identify a problem. And now you're trying to get a solution through that which God has placed in you in form of a talent, in form of that creativity. So if you understand that there is a limit to which you can go in the name of being an activist or trying to pass a message, then you stand a better chance of being listened to. Problem is, as young people, we have a lot of energy right now. We have a lot of exposure, both negative and positive. But we are thinking it's easier to get your way by being maybe negative or by being the secular way. And you realize that God is the same yesterday, today, and even tomorrow. He never changes his standards so that he can conform to the times in the world. He's the same one. And if he says, this is the way to do a particular thing, I cannot come as Gideon and change it because I'm in the 21st century. The one we call Gen Z. The reality is I still have to live according to what he's saying. And therefore, in my creativity, I need to ask myself, what would have happened? That I hear someone says, if Jesus was here, how would he have done it? Well, I don't know. But the truth is, you have to also remain within the guidelines of the given group. If it is a church, what are the guidelines that we have? If it is a youth group, what are those guidelines? Even if it's the government, what are the guidelines? Because you think that you are doing something good, then you realize that you're getting sued for defamation. Just because in your mystery, somewhere you put something, then someone uses that against you. And a part of the audience mentioned about one of the local artists who did that. So it's good to know how far it goes. But at the same time, let us know that we are here to solve problems. And the reason why God places the talents and the giftings inside of us, which come in form of, and the content, which come out in form of creativity, is so that we can solve these problems. And I love one speaker who I would say confidently has been my mentor for a long time, though we've never met. He's called Dr. Miles Munro. He says that the kind of creativity that is in the grave is the richest place on earth. Because people went there with their creativity and with the things that, books that have never been written are in the graves, cars that were never designed are in the graves. Why? Because someone feared. So it's always good to strike a balance and know. Sometimes just try it out. You may never know the outcome. You may get opposition, but you won't be the first person to be opposed. Even Jesus himself, Son of God,
himself.
Alikataliwa, na kuna wale walikuwa nasema huyu mse ni muimbo, you know, the Pharisees, you remember, wanasema huyu mse hapana, mbona anafunza hivi? So the truth of the matter is there will always be those people who discourage you. There will always be those people who tell you that this is not the right way. But as long as you feel convicted inside of you that I'm doing the right thing and I'm within the guidelines, go out and manifest rather than dying with that thing that you may have brought a solution to the world. For instance, look at M-Pesa. Who survives today without M-Pesa? It was an
Using
idea
pesa
from
every day.
someone. This person could have as well said, "Ay, lakini niaje pesa itatumwa kama haiko cash," you know. But nowadays we are cashless society.
Yeah.
Because someone sat down and thought of an innovative way of sio lazima pesa ipeanwe physically. So hata wewe labda hiyo solution, hiyo creativity yenye una feel nimekalia ama una feel maybe haitaweza, maybe that is the next thing that the world is waiting for. I encourage you, go out and manifest, because God has given to you for a reason, and that reason is more often than not a solution to the problems you are facing as a society today.
Okay, good. I
let me-
feel
let
like
me
that
just-
is a really great parting shot. It is really great. Actually, take the initiative and go outside there. We have been talking a lot about taking initiatives. Take the initiative, go outside there, but understand all of those things we said. It is important to understand your audience. You can't sit the people in church and start telling them how you love this girl. You can't sit them and start telling them how this girl broke your heart. Yeah, they did. That happened. Write your piece. It's all right. Please write it and actually say it to the right audience. You can even say it in your room. When it comes to creativity and activism, which also includes actually preaching the gospel, don't be limited by the fact that you think you can't do it. Go outside there and do it, but know your limits.
Yes.
Yeah.
Understanding your content is also something someone said. Please, for heaven's sake, I beg you, don't go criticizing someone if you don't really know the true story. You don't know the backstory, the side story, and the left and the every other story. Know everything. So when you go outside there, you actually have the right information. Creativity and Christianity and creativity in general can exist, should exist, and should be motivated to go outside there and do it. That is all from me. This was The Quench. Today we were talking about creativity and Christianity. I will see you next time on MBCI TV.
The Quench, where you ask, we answer.